All right, so the purpose of this AME that we're doing right now is something that we've done at Shopify internally for the last, I want to say, lots of years. Like, it's a tradition that we do every Friday. We open up town halls for the entire company, and once a month we sit down with Tobi and ask him absolutely everything. Last year we did this with you guys because you really are an extension of our internal team, and we see you guys as that extension and that family. So we wanted to do that with all of you, and there's some really good questions. So Tobi, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, do you want a beer?
No, it's
okay.
not the right time.
Okay. Okay, the first one is a product ask. When will Shopify add built-in subscription capability? The lack of this feature is stunting the growth of my Plus clients and forcing them to other gateways. Jesse Myers.
TBD. So it's true. Subscription payments are probably amongst the most requested features. It comes up. It's come up in 2006 when I started, and it still comes up in 2017. The reason is one of prioritization. Subscriptions come with a lot of requirements for managing them. You probably all know our customer area isn't that amazing in the storefronts, right? The things that the buyers log in. There's probably 15 screens, new liquid templates and everything that would have to create it just to manage existing subscriptions. But the more important thing is that subscriptions have traditionally been, and there are merchants who have legitimate reasons for needing them, but it's traditionally been a feature that merchants wanted a lot more than their buyers, right? And so this is why it comes up a lot probably in the context of Plus. It's people have put it into their RFPs or something like this because they obviously would like a subscription income stream. But I have only really found a handful of good examples of good subscription service, like Dollar Shave Club always comes up because they are legitimately one of the only really good uses of this kind of thing. So I personally think some of you might be familiar with this Amazon's dash buttons kind of thing, or now with Alexa you can reorder things. I think making it seamless and productize it and getting it down to a single physical button which you can stick somewhere to reorder your things that you want to reorder is actually a superior experience from a buyer perspective, and is something that perfectly works on the platform. So we fundamentally don't build features just to win RFP wars. We build features that there's actually a growing market on. And so subscriptions is actually much, much smaller once you account for that than it seems.
Yeah. I mean, last year when I was here, a lot of people were talking about multi-location inventory and when is that going to be coming. So that was an interesting thing that we started talking about, and it was something that we decided to even talk about on stage this year, even though there's a lot of work that we're still doing internally. So what are your thoughts on that? Because last year we were like, oh, it's not coming, we're not talking about it.
Yeah, so this is definitely one of those things I talked about when we went home after Unite. We just sort of changed the kind of things we were working on. And it's because some of you just told us really, really important things we needed to hear, such as, hey, you might think you don't need multi-location, but then someone takes one of your chip card readers out with their iPhone to some place and they're making a single sale, they're actually a multi-location business. Yeah. This is not something that some people need some of the time. This is something that most people need most of the time. And that sentence is key for us, right? If most people need something most of the time, that's when we do it, when we build it into Shopify. That's a good example of this is when Shopify started, there was no mobile phones at all, but maybe 5 years or a couple of years later, some people needed mobile optimized stores, and I think during this time, in the end of 2009 or whatever, people were still building completely specialized websites for mobile phones, and we actually had some apps coming who created sort of mobile optimized storefronts, and then it got really clear once we looked at the number that mobile was something that most people need most of the time, and it had to move into core, right? So this is the progression of things, and so. this, like, we have strong opinions on things, but they are weakly held. And if someone comes and says, hey, here's this one thing you didn't consider, and no one considered, and this does happen, that sort of invalidates our current position. We go all the way back and we look at the entirety of it and say, no, actually, this is something we absolutely have to prioritize, and let's go.
Right. So you've been here for 2 days now. I saw you at the after party taking photos with a lot of partners. What are some things that you're hearing that you're going to go back and maybe rethink or try to bring into the product?
Yeah, so I think, and this is probably spawned because we said that we are working on hardware now. I think there's one of the most interesting shifts that's currently going on in retail, like outside of the digital realm, is is that as you all know, like the big box stores are dying. What's going on is that retail is actually shifting from an occupation of necessity into a form of entertainment, and so. What I'm hearing a lot is that people, like, this is really interesting from a perspective of lots of agencies, where the design capabilities end up being very applicable to the design of physical stores, physical experiences that change significantly season to season in these stores. But it's very, very hard to wrap a great experience around some PC from the 90s that's on a counter somewhere. And so, or even, frankly, an iPad that looks exactly like what we have right now. And that there's just a lot of more potential there for things. So I want to think a little bit more about this kind of world. I came here, I was a little bit worried about sort of Shopify Pay, just because it's a big departure for us. Yeah, so were you, I know.
It's a big announcement.
And maybe worth saying why. Shopify is, like, the reason for us being, like, what we want to do is we want to make other people look good, right? Like, this is not a company that's like going around, look at us, these kind of things. We want to make merchants look good, right? We want to. This is why it has no, like, branding. Wherever we can avoid branding, we do. And so. Us having a product, like calling something that buyers interact with, that's called Shopify, is just very new and was one of us very strongly held opinions, which we actually rather strongly held, and so we sort of walked away from this and said, okay. We don't put the word Shopify on people's checkout, but if you click the Save My Information, we kind of have to acknowledge that the system that you're going to interact with is called Shopify Pay, because otherwise the whole system will not make sense. So we moved it still one opt-in away, but that was a departure for us.
Yeah, but I mean, consumers will still somehow see the Shopify Pay eventually if they, like, really dig into it. So yeah. I think that's something that's, like, fairly new for all of us, right?
Yeah, it's just something new. But I mean, we also should acknowledge that, like, many people now have heard of Shopify. That's it's something that's going to start happening, and so I think this is, like, we know. We needed to give it a name, and so I think that's the best name that was available to us. I think it's going to be significantly increasing conversions, so I think we're all going to like it in this way.
Yeah. Since we're not, like, live streaming this, we are recording, crap. I was going to say, I mean, Shopify Pay and the brand thing, like, opens us up to do more interesting things with the fact that we have so many stores on our platform. One of the things that I'm most interested in is what we're doing with data to make things faster. And I know you talk a lot about the whole, I don't know which term we're supposed to be using anymore, AI, machine learning, whatever. But what are some of your thoughts on the potential of all of this information that we have of people checking out on Shopify checkouts, people using Shopify stores? What do you think is the future there?
Yeah, so I think the really interesting thing about Shopify Pay is that in a way that is the first time for merchants that they're actually going to benefit from, I don't want to call it a network effect, because it's not really true, but, like,
it's kind of like the ecosystem.
But now if you make a choice and you're using, like, e-commerce system A and e-commerce system B, and on e-commerce system B, if someone arrives to your checkout, even though they've never been there, and they can check out without having to type anything in, then e-commerce system B is clearly superior. So there is now an advantage to Shopify, where before that it's sort of everyone for themselves. So I think this is an interesting thing we can do due to the scale that we have. In terms of the data, I mean, like there's a million things. I talked about pushing the learning curve down. I have a fairly large team working on essentially creating a model for success, right? Like we already know that the success rates of business on Shopify are higher than the success rates of generally businesses that are being started. So we're helping some, but clearly one of the paths that leads to more entrepreneurs is like make more people who are trying to become entrepreneurs successful in doing so. So we have the 400,000 stores that are going on. We have many more which didn't go anywhere, and extracting information from these journeys that are reflected in our data sets, and using it through Home and through Kit and through these other ways to communicate back to people and saying, hey, here's look at this thing. This is maybe a next step for you in this journey. And just helping people with this is, I think, hugely has just tons of potential.
Cool. Okay, there's a question on the stock price that I know you're not allowed to answer. Where do you see the stock price by the end of the year? Don't answer that. But
I think there's actually there's literally a law against me answering that question.
Yeah, no, you can't answer it. No, not at all. But it has been a year since we were here last year. The company's grown quite a bit. We are a public company. What do you think is changing? Do you think we've changed internally? Do you think? Yeah, give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I've been at Shopify now 13 years, sort of 12. I think every single year I've met a new version of Shopify that definitely had more of its strengths and I hope less of its weaknesses. And I've always liked the latest version better than the previous versions. So that's, I think, that's the way I see it. It's different but better. And I think so. From my perspective, again, I'm very product focused. I can get into the weeds and all these things we announced, right? And
we know.
Probably one of the downsides of working at Shopify. That I might show up and go, okay, you show me the code. So my favorite thing is it just somehow has been fairly clear what needed to be done. Like Shopify the software is literally what I hoped to find when I started Snowdevil. The alternative version of his entire Shopify story is Tobi starts Snowdevil, finds great software, uses it, the end, right? That's not what happened. And so it was clear what needed to exist, and so I built it, right? So I built the software that I hoped I would have found. And then, based on that, I've just spinning this entire thing forward and saying, okay, well, I have a pretty good appreciation for what's going on in the tech industry, all the technologies that are launching. I have a very clear idea of how things would look in an ideal case. So why don't we just build that now? Right? And so my biggest challenge over the many years was just being patient, right? Because I am not very. So that was
he's not. No.
That was a challenge for me because I couldn't distract the company because like startups and product companies, they never end up dying because of starvation, right? They always die due to indigestion. They always eat too much, and then they stop doing important things. They get distracted, and then they fall behind. So it's a tricky thing to have a fairly clear idea where things need to go over a long period of time, and realize that you have to single file give the team here's one thing, here's one thing, here's one thing, and to get to the end of this stuff, which you have to sort of in your mind, you actually have to work for a decade. That requires a lot of patience. So what I love about Shopify now is we can actually be focused on many things at the same time without us being distracted. So that's by far the best thing about the size. Shopify is about 2,500 people now, it's funny because I always thought of myself as this, sort of small startup-y kind of guy, right? If you would have asked me, that's what I would have said. And I do not want to ever work for a company with less than 1,000 people again, right? It's just, I think this is actually where it really gets fun. So that's my favorite thing about it.
Cool. Who do you see as a competitor in 5 years and why? 5 years is a long time.
Yeah. Two folks in a garage close by. Not anyone who exists right now, I think. I don't. We've made good choices building Shopify, but we've also benefited from a historically incompetent field of competitors.
Toby.
I probably shouldn't have said that.
Toby. Where's my beer?
I think as a credible observer of reality, this is a fair statement to make, right? So, anyways, I'm just going to run with it.
I'm going to the next question. What's your M&A strategy? Good segue. What's your M&A strategy, and what do you look for in an acquisition? Tough question.
Yeah. We haven't been a very acquisitive company so far. I think what I look for is it's hard to answer this. It's honestly it's a little bit I know it when I see it kind of situation. I can tell you what I optimize for. Like I think M&A in technology has historically not worked very well. Like there's a lot of deals happens, and there's very few that you can really point to as both were great deals and great deal I would define as something that worked for the company that acquired and the company that got acquired. There's sort of YouTube really needed Google to become the true YouTube, right? So these deals exist, but they are when you go to Instagram and who else, right? And so when I think about M&A, it's simple. It's probably going to, we're probably rather in the boat of doing smaller deals, but we optimize for deals where the day after the acquisition finishes, we can all be convinced that the job of the people who got acquired is better than the day before the acquisition, right? If a team was on a mission that is clearly easier to accomplish as being part of Shopify, like Kit is a great example, then we do this. Like we've acquired, you came through an acquisition to us, this was Jet Cooper, which was a famous design agency out of Toronto. And the situation is like Jet Cooper had an amazing thing going on, but at the end of the day, you still had to fill out timesheets, like for client work, and you couldn't see anything really to the end because at some point you had to toss your products over some kind of fence, and they went the bowels of whoever contacted you.
And knowing the type of people that we are, we're so obsessed with what we were building, and that was like the biggest opportunity for us, right? Like to be on the product side. So
yeah,
I feel better after.
Yeah, I think
I'm having fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a couple Breitbart questions. I'll ask one general one. Have we revised our stance on Breitbart as a result of the debate?
Well, we've gotten certainly a lot of feedback. And, again, we always listen. There was really legitimate complaints about the way we, state this particular case in our terms of services, for instance. So we have regrouped on that and just said, okay, well, if people are confused with our terms of service, let's clarify them. We've added a acceptable use policy, which just sort of lays out very clearly what we accept and what we don't. And based on this is what we use to verify. Like there's a reporting tool that you can use, you report a store to us, and then there's a process where we compare the reported item against this acceptable use policy, and then and this is a few lawyers, like this is lawyers doing this, and depending on which side it goes, it's either going to be kicked off or it isn't, right? So the process has gotten better because of the feedback, and we just sort of wanted to make sure that it was clear in our terms of service which part talks about what Shopify accepts and which part talks about Shopify payments, because with Shopify payments we are kind of depending on what Visa or MasterCard wants. So like lots of people sort of said there was sort of this juxtaposition that was a little bit hard to follow. But the position we think we got that right, and we can't, not everything we do is going to be something that everyone thinks is particularly correct, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, but they are updated now, so.
So we updated that, yeah. Like it's now much more clear, and also we turned something which was sort of a manual process of reporting into we built a proper tool so you can do this, and it just makes the process a little bit more streamlined.
Great. What are some practical use cases for AI and machine learning?
Is that sort of, do you think this is a general question, or is this Shopify related or commerce related?
I think you should answer both. I know you think about both.
Yeah, there's so much hype, but and I know, we've all kind of also learned, omnichannel, right? Just gonna go there for a second. Omnichannel is this hype and buzzword that existed for 5 years. I think predominantly in McKinsey pitch decks and doing keynotes at old school e-commerce conferences, right? And even if companies had an omni-channel strategy, that just meant they purchased a point-of-sale software company and an e-commerce software company, and the salespeople tried to sell both of you at the same time, right? And so it's hard to not learn to get really, really jaded with buzzwords because they kind of don't really impact things. So now I actually worry that there's a little bit of fatigue setting in with AI and machine learning, and those are not terribly precise terms. But really, I'm a computer programmer. I apprenticed as a computer programmer underneath a master computer programmer in Germany at Siemens Nixdorf. I learned this thing as a craft, right? And that is what it is to me. It's a craft, and there's craftsmanship that goes into it. And so what you do as a computer programmer is you set out rules, and you use a lot of rules and composed in a certain way, which then builds the software that we all want to have. And this has taken us enormously far. But machine learning and AI is different. It's you take data and you let computers a little bit at it, and you give them some basic direction, and it's getting less and less every day. And from that, they learn to do completely new things that we actually could not ever figure out rules to write. So all the speech synthesis that goes on in Alexa and Siri and all these kind of things are just tremendously better because of computers have acquired an ability to teach themselves. And this is just, it's so hard to, the profoundness of this is staggering, right? So everything is getting better because of it. It has applications in so many different ways. And we are finding, you can look at what's happening. I think probably the most interesting thing that's happening and most sort of visceral is the whole AlphaGo thing, where you went to the most ancient board game that exists. It was the best players in the world have not been beaten by computers because we could not formulate the rules that allowed computers to beat humans in the way that we could do with chess. But really, then we did through machine learning, and London office of Google did that. And now people are learning new strategies from the machines. They realized that the metaphors they're using to teach chess were biased towards human concepts, and that the machines actually figured out more optimal ways of doing it. And so that I love, because there's a symbiotic kind of relationship. I love that the machine can teach people, because I think here's a narrative which is sort of lost a little bit. So Garry Kasparov was the chess grandmaster, actually fascinating person, in all stages of his life, and he's still alive. I don't want to imply it's over. But he also every human who played chess was deathly afraid of Garry, but then Garry got beaten by a computer. So Garry did not like that. This was the whole Deep Blue thing, end of the 90s. And so he was the first person to be beaten. And so he does not like talking about these events because it's hurtful for him, but he started I listened to an interview recently, and what he said I loved, because he said, yes, no person can beat a computer anymore at chess, but a person and a computer playing as a team, playing just a computer, will always win. And so this aspect is missing from the debate. Like I find, like I talk about giving people superpowers, right? Computers are not, yes, they're going to replace some jobs, but what they are predominantly are going to do is they teach us to be better at the things we already care to be good about. And so that's what I love. That's what I want. And I think this is the way we as a community should think about and how we should try to extract value from all these new technologies that are coming every day. And I think we can train, wouldn't you like to have the perfect business coach sitting with you throughout your journey building a new business, right? Someone who really understands you and just can tell you what's next and how to, how to build it. Or actually, after you've done a certain process a few times, ask you if this is how you always want to do it, and just overtake this. This is the direction I think things need to go, and we kind of couldn't really do this with computers so well because everyone's processes differently, and what rule set systems are good at is encoding things that are the same for everyone, but not with so much variance. And I think machine learning is going to allow us to get there.
Cool. What was the most exciting announcement made at Unite for you?
It's a toss-up between. I think it's a hardware. It's partly
the
just
Pay
because
team's heart just broke.
yeah. It just the point of the card reader. I love it, but just because it's so us in a way. Once again, the state of this industry is always frustrating to me, right? You have. A lot. We've tried to do this with off-the-shelf products, right? We really didn't want to go into hardware. But I can only take so much when I see cashiers and merchants try to perfectly align a credit card to a reader and just get it in the right way, and then realizing it's the wrong way, and they actually turn over the right thing. Why do we keep doing this? And then there's other companies which are mostly I think their main design goal is to make the card reader be a certain geometrical shape rather than being usable. And so it's it just from this exasperation. I think we just said, okay, let's bring some pragmatism to this. Let's make a card reader that actually is really hard to put a credit card in the wrong way. And even if you just get it close, it will slide in properly. And why did that take till 2017, right? So I think we just realized we have to get involved because the way we're thinking about these things is just a little bit different and maybe a little bit more attuned towards pragmatism. And so when we sort of initially thought about it, everyone said software companies can become hardware companies. It's you have to start as a hardware company. So I love proving people wrong, right? It did involve a bunch of Shopifyers essentially living on planes between Toronto and Shenzhen for a while, but I think we managed, so that's great.
Nice. We also announced a ton of APIs and awesome things for our developer and partner community. What are you hoping that they build with what we launched?
Yeah, I mean, even such sometimes the simple things just the merchants, the events API, marketing events API. It closes a loop that we didn't have. We will get feedback on you get to claim credit for all the great work you're doing, creating sales, and we get to properly celebrate you in the admin interface and saying, hey, this came through this app you used to send out a mailing list, I think that just closes a loop that we can use for all sorts of good things. And I'm a big fan of. This is like, okay, so hopefully, like this is only for the developers. I think GraphQL is great. It's so,
That's
like,
what I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Shopify is like just, the data model of Shopify is so massive that like a system where you tell us exactly what kind of data you need is just going to scale better. It's going to allow us all to build much faster software. It allows us to do a lot of server optimizations, which we can't do with a current REST API. And I think especially in the mobile world, there's like really excellent clients that you can get off the shelf. You point them at the endpoint, and you're gonna have an easy time building your app much simpler than before. So it's one of those win-win-win situations, which I really like. So that's for the storefront API. So that's a good step.
Cool. What is your 10-year vision for Shopify? 10 years is a long time.
Yeah,
it's an anonymous question.
I don't know. There's some things that will not change in 10 years, and then a lot of things that will change. I think people will want to start their own businesses in 10 years. People will need something, hopefully something that is more hands-on in helping them, but it will still be something recognizably as a admin interface where you have to just go and see what's going on. But past that, will there still be websites in 10 years? I don't know, right? Like, 10 years is a really long time. Like 10 years ago, I can still say this until September. 10 years ago, there was no iPhone, right? Like, it's a completely different planet, right? So, no smartphones there. So I'm not gonna, like, yeah.
You often talk about Shopify, forget the 10 years, but you want us to be a 100-year company. What do you mean by that?
Well, people will want to start, again, the things that we care about, people will care about all throughout this century, absolutely. So I'm not saying like, hey, let's build a single code base that is going to, be with us and does exactly this kind of one thing for the next, what is that, like 83 years. But I think the seeds of great companies are laid early, and I think you need to, like, companies that last for a long time have to have great conviction, and of course have to resist selling themselves early and all these kind of good things. So I don't know if I'm going to succeed with this, but I'm operating under the assumption that now I'm talking about the entire business industry, worldwide, everyone. All of us have not figured out how to build perfect companies yet, obviously. A kind of obvious statement, right? I would go so far as saying I don't think anyone has figured out how to build a great company yet. And what I mean with that is, if you go and watch, let's say, sort of this black and white footage of Olympics, like, let's say, hockey. We're Canadians. We can talk about hockey, right? Let's say you watch, like, one of the first hockey matches, part of Olympics in, like, the 19 whatevers. Like, technically that's hockey, but that's where the similarities stop, right? It's like a clump of men chasing a puck. No one plays a position and anything like this. So I think that's roughly the state of building businesses, like the internal systems. There's so many mistakes we're making, and so what I want to do is in 40 years when I'm retiring, I want to look back at my company and be less embarrassed by it than all my peers. That's sort of what I'm going for. So with that comes like let's rethink a lot. Like we have a big advantage, which is that we are sort of outsiders. Like we're in Ottawa and Toronto and so on. We're a little bit away from the rest of the tech industry, so we get to be immersed in it, but also just like we have enough time to think what we see, to see does that make sense, and sometimes we say no. And like be our own selves, and just build a machine that's completely tuned towards this goal of just making commerce better and better and better, allowing more participation, bringing down learning curves, keeping space, like keeping opportunity open for non-technical people, and those things get deeply encoded in the operating system, and I think those are still going to be important to Shopify 80 years from now, if even long after I'm dead, and if Shopify is so lucky to still be around, and that's meaningful to me.
Great. So before we wrap it up, I know there's a bunch more questions, but I do want to open it up to the audience. How do we want to do this? Just put your hands up.
Do you have an extra mic?
Yep. Is there an extra mic? You could just say it, I'll repeat it. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Justine. I just wanted to encourage you to, I think it would be great. I think you have a really great company, despite what you might think at this moment. And the people at Shopify that I've met are just really incredible people. And I think maybe your legacy could be the kind of principles and practices and policies and things that you've developed to create Shopify. I would really love it if you guys would open source that a bit more, kind of in the way that Zappos has written the book on customer support, or how the Google Workbook has kind of educated us on better hiring practices and things like that. I think a lot of how you run Shopify and how your developer teams kind of organize and things like that. I think if you want to create entrepreneurs, I think one way that you could do that would be to help us know how we can run our companies like Shopify.
Wow.
That's humbling.
That's one of the nicest things I've ever heard.
Incredibly humbling. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
So Tobi, you got to write a book now. A Medium post.
I've also said some really bad things about Shopify. If you remember, I'm the guy who wrote the Medium post about the PayPal e-check problem.
Wow. That's awesome. But I think there's still people who have nightmares because of that post at Shopify. Shopify is a very friendly company. I think that's, like, by the way, which is really easy to do if you hire a whole bunch of Canadians. But there's a thing that comes out called Tobi Tornado, which may have hit around that time.
Yeah.
But like, so very sorry for the e-checks kind of debacle, and we promise to not have that happen again. So,
Tobi Tornadoes?
it
Want to
happens.
tell them about it?
No,
Okay.
let's leave it at that.
My team calls them Arati Avalanches.
Yeah.
They're not good.
All
They're
right.
not good. Yeah. MP came up with that. More questions?
He skipped my first question.
Oh, yeah.
So
Tobi, you got it right.
did I skip it? Because like I took it as a suggestion. You're incredibly kind. I don't have the self-confidence in what we've figured out so far that you seem to have. I like the idea. It would have to be for a right reason. I find a lot of people. I find a lot of these books, even like I was fascinated for 15 seconds with the Google Work Rules book until I realized that it's entirely aspirational. After talking with a bunch of Google people, this is like, often these books are written to actually convince the rest of the organization to become what was described in the book. And so this is what I mean. Like nothing, like. Thank you very much. Shopify looks good from the outside. That's really, really great to hear. But it is messy internally. Like it's.
I could vouch for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of chaos. And by the way, some of this is actually we like,
great, yeah.
right? Because out of chaos comes creativity, right? And these are the kind of constraints that we are under. We are chronically understaffed. It sounds like we are a lot of people, but we really aren't. Given, like there's startups that aim at, overtaking X% of a $100 million market, and they are like 5 people. And if you calculate that, market opportunity versus headcount, that's actually more staffing than Shopify has, given its market opportunity, right? So we're actually tiny compared to what we want to do. And so there's like all these kind of things that happen because of that. And I don't know, I think we need a while before we get there.
Okay, next question.
I'm wondering if you can share your thoughts on Amazon. A lot of the merchants I talk to, there's a love-hate relationship there, and Amazon's obviously growing in influence and power. Where do SMB retailers fit in going forward?
Yeah, this is clearly one of those questions where Afi is going to give me a look, potentially.
Not.
There's no other company I respect as much as Amazon. Like, it's just absolutely incredible. Yet, the worldview of Amazon and the worldview of Shopify are fairly incompatible. Like, in the worldview of Amazon, there should be factories over here, and there should be buyers over here, and everything between those things should be Amazon's margin and preferably die, right? In Shopify's view, the merchants are extremely important, right? And they exist in the space that Amazon wants to make go away. I don't know if our bet is right. Like, I really hope so, because for one thing, when you buy something from a merchant, right? But yes, when you acquire a product, clearly you do. That's why you spend the money. But you're actually doing something else, something incredibly democratic. What you do is you send money that way because this product exists. And so the way capitalism works, at least at this scale, is that by buying this product, you're actually voting that more of this kind of product should exist. And it's not just the product. The process that led to a product creation should also, more should exist of this. So the person who designed it is now, like, maybe they need more people who design more products for this line. The person who works in inventory, there's more of this kind of thing. The entire process, every single step, is validated by this purchase. So this is like a very subtle way of how this planet actually changes, is by someone creating something and then a lot of people buying it, and the universe and the market conspires to produce more of this thing, right? And so, because this is my very firm belief, and is foundational to my thinking about commerce, and because of that, I'm extremely committed to just making so that, like, at least, like, it's hard enough to create products that people want. After you account for that, if you can do this, I want Shopify to at least do all the rest, right? Like, so just to make sure you can actually build this business, so that there's a chance for people to be able to vote for more of this to exist.
Like my T-shirt.
Yes, you know, so I think killing the space, the margins, and the opportunity for people to create more products by creating very centralized marketplaces where the existing winners continue to win is a dumb experiment, which I don't think we should be running. I think we should preserve the space and celebrate the small and the new. And so is this really between Amazon and us? This is the thing. Like, in technology, every technology company is frenemies with every other technology company, right? There's no such thing as real friends. I think there may have been, Microsoft and Intel may have been friends for about 20 years, right? But maybe the one instance of two companies getting along for a long time. So we work with Amazon Pay, we have Amazon Channel. Amazon is a phenomenally important part of the e-commerce ecosystem. I personally think it shouldn't be the only one. And I'm not so sure if Amazon agrees with that. So.
Over there? Yep. Just behind you. Yeah.
Thank you. So I know you've been talking about changing commerce and making it better. So I have a difficult question around that, which is, how do you identify the assumptions that are baked in that need to be broken in order to make things fundamentally better?
Yeah, it's the most difficult thing. It's like figuring out your biases, figuring out your but assumptions. Like, Harley had this wonderful slide about mountains, right? At the end of his talk. Essentially, this mountain slide usually around Shopify comes out when we sort of say, hey, we've all been climbing this one mountain, but after we got to a certain height, the fog sort of lifted, we could see further, and we saw, hey, there was actually a much bigger mountain to climb over there. And everyone, I know this is going to be a lot of work, but let's go back down, let's walk over there, let's climb that mountain instead, right? Very, 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 very difficult to do. Because the way you build companies, the way you build processes conspires sort of to make you continue going into this way. So it's something that's worth doing. So how do you do it? I think being an observer of what's really going on and learning your history. I just get so much from reading various biographies by people who kind of invented this stuff we are basing things on. One of the most fascinating books to me was a book called The Box. It's you won't have read it, and most people probably will not. But I loved it, and it's a history of a shipping container, like literally. And the most amazing thing about this was, before that you had trucking companies, you had railroads, which are incredibly powerful, especially in North America, and you had ships, right? And to get a product from somewhere in the United States to Europe, you would put it on a truck. So then a couple of people would take it out of a truck, put it somewhere into brake into the ship, and you would use containers. You would use trains and so on, and it would cost like $16 or so to get a kilogram shipped to Europe. I remember there was this guy called Malcolm McLean, some Scottish immigrant who somehow managed to buy a trucking company. And then at some point he had this epiphany that he doesn't really care about trucks. He really just cares about getting things from one point to another. And that realization, over time, he bought railroads, he bought shipping, and then standardized things, built the shipping container, and the cost dropped from $16 to like 40 cents by the end, right? So everyone really loved their railroads. Everyone really loved their trucks. Everyone loved their boats. But the problem that people should have fallen in love with was just getting products delivered to their destination. So this is really difficult, and it comes from insights. Think about even our industry is in one of those situations. I don't know if there's a shipping container that's coming to the e-commerce space, but we should admit that all we're doing is 1980 Sears catalogs with buy buttons online, right? That's all e-commerce is, right? And is that, that doesn't sound so sexy anymore, right? We've just had a conference about 1980 Sears catalogs with buy buttons in 2017, right? We can do better than that, right? And so I think we should, this is what we should hold ourselves to, and just figure out, hey, people want to start businesses. People want to make money, In shipping, people actually want teleportation. That's tough to do given Newtonian laws and physics and so on. So the next best thing is they want stuff to show up within the hour, right? So how can we do that rather than obsessing so much about warehouse tracking systems and so on? Let's just figure out ways to get products fast. And so I think this is starting now. I think more people are taking this sort of overview effect to the entirety of a space and trying to solve the entire issue rather than optimize climb some kind of mountain within the larger map.
All right, I'm going to take one more question. Any on this side?
There's always an area you don't always think about, like Amazon buttons. What's all this on the whole page of Amazon, where you push a button now and you want to buy something. I mean, they thought of something I wouldn't have even thought about. These buttons now you can push on. And have it on your own homepage, I suppose, and you push a button because you always order that product. So that's something that somebody thought of that's really different.
So things that are not existing that you're thinking about? Not yet?
Stay tuned.
We're going to buttons now, but I'm just saying it was an interesting concept when I went to Amazon that day, and here's yet another way to buy what I like to buy there.
Yeah, right. And again, if you go to an Amazon bookstore and take out your Amazon app, it gets crazier yet, right? The nice thing is we are now leaving the confines of a Sears catalog pattern, right? We are starting more and more people. Amazon is clearly amongst them, and frankly the leader, in just figuring out we've implemented this legacy of ours perfectly. We've climbed this mountain. What do the other mountains look like? And please, let's be part of this, right? This is where we need to be as a community. We are innovators, we are creative, we see this space of ours from so many different angles. I think, there doesn't need to be one company or one person to kind of say, hey, I know exactly where things are going. There just needs to be lots of people who have opinions, and those should not be confined to just one space, but they should be confined to one large problem. And I think a lot of patterns that everyone is going to be using for purchasing, that everyone will see as completely obvious 5 years from now, will be invented by people who have been at this conference. I think so. This is the goal of this community, and I think this is what we should, the standards we should hold ourselves to.
Great. So on that note, thank you so much, everyone, for listening and attending this random second day of Unite.
Thank you.
Just a couple housekeeping. So the power is not back on, which means we are not going to continue programming. There are no shuttles that are going to be here before 4. So we have called a bunch of taxis and additional transportation. It's going to be near that Gallery 308 area where the restaurant and bar are. Uber is also running. The airport is running. There are some flight delays. They're not major. Public transportation does have significant delays. If anyone is staying at the Clift Hotel, the power is not back on, but they are accepting guests and they're helping with luggage if you need any help. And then the one last housekeeping note that I wanted to announce was we're so excited to see you guys next year at Unite, but we have decided to move the location. Unite will be in my hometown of Toronto, Canada. So we'll be announcing the date in the next couple weeks, and we'll see you guys in Canada. All right.